Hello, I'm Chuck Wolfe, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolfe Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolfe, and this is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I want to thank everybody that's a regular listener for tuning in, and I also want to thank everybody that might be just driving by or happen to have the radio on and is listening for the first time. I'll tell you a little bit about the show and get started with the show in a moment, but first, in case there's somebody who's wanted to call and was waiting from last week and didn't get a chance, I know we had somebody call right at the end of the show. I want to give you that opportunity to call right in right away. The show is about calling in, and I'll explain more about it, but I'll give people a chance to call in right away if that's what they want to do. The number to call is 203-336-9756. Again, you're listening to Chuck Wolfe. This is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. You're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio in Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut and Suffolk County in New York, and also available on podcast. I just put a couple of shows up from March that, in case you haven't had a chance to listen to them, they're on podcast now. And my show from last week will be up probably tomorrow, and I'll put this one up the day afterwards. So if you haven't listened to the show before, the show is all about helping people deal with challenging situations in their life. And with that, I have the ability to help people based on a lot of my experiences, my education, my background has been in psychology. Many years ago as a therapist. These days, for the last lot of years, really, I've been an executive or leadership coach, working with people in all kinds of situations in large companies, small companies, military organizations, government bodies like the state legislature or local legislation, and even in the federal government. So if you are interested in finding out how I might help, you want to understand how the Emotion Roadmap works. The show, again, is called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. And the Emotion Roadmap is the idea that we can have more control over our emotions than most of us realize. So while many people have grown up in life and feel as though when an emotion happens, you have to just deal with that emotion. You've heard the expression, it is what it is. You have to play the hand you're dealt. And one of the things that's been fascinating for me in the last 20-some years in the world of emotional intelligence that I entered into in the late 1990s is this concept that we can actually influence and change our emotions. We don't necessarily have to be limited by what we're feeling at a point in time. If what we're feeling is destructive, or at least not helpful, then is there something we can do about that? And the answer is yes. And so the Emotion Roadmap was designed to help people to realize that when an emotion that they're experiencing in real time is causing them to have thoughts that are pulling them away or becoming an obstruction to what they're trying to accomplish, pulling them away from their objective. And as a result, the behaviors that they're implementing and acting on are not the behaviors that they need to be successful. The concept of changing emotions is the idea that if we change our emotions to an emotion that's more helpful, even ideal, that new emotion, that ideal emotion, is going to change the thinking in our heads, the self-thoughts that we have, the self-talk that we do. And then in changing the self-talk, we then are more likely to be able to change our behavior. So for real behavior change to happen, for people to really experience the possibility and the reality of behavior change that's sustainable, lasting, and effective, it's almost always because they're changing the self-talk inside themselves. And in changing their self-talk, in order to get that right, in order to make that real, you have to understand what emotion or emotions are driving that self-talk and see if you need to change those emotions. And if you can't change those emotions, which sometimes happens, then is there some other way to act on those emotions that is helpful instead of counterproductive? So that's what I try to help people with. I try to help if you call in with a situation where you are feeling impacted in a way that you're uncertain how to proceed. Smart people, in my experience, often get stuck when something emotional is happening either inside them or they're worried about the emotions of another person that they have to deal with. It may not be somebody you like or care about, but nevertheless you have to deal with them. It might be at work or in your neighborhood or in a community center or in a religious organization or some club you belong to. You might not like the person, but you have to deal with them. On the other hand, it might be somebody that you really care about, somebody close to you in the workplace, or somebody that you love at home. In any case, when the emotions that you're experiencing are in your way, are counterproductive, represent obstacles instead of facilitators, what emotion would be better? That's the concept of an emotion roadmap. I like to use the example that's pretty simple to understand. Lots of times people find themselves in situations where they want to be confident and yet they're feeling anxious. So wouldn't it be helpful to know how you might move from feeling anxious to confident when you're in a situation like that? So the whole idea of emotional intelligence is that we can learn what the science teaches us about emotional intelligence and how to manage our emotions, how to use our emotions, how to identify our emotions, how to understand how emotions work. We can learn something about the science. It's now available to us. It wasn't 20 years ago. But there's lots of research now. You Google emotional intelligence and your search will be flooded with all kinds of things. If you Google Emotion Roadmap, mostly what you'll find is me and lots of things that I've been doing over the years. So if you want to know more about what I'm doing, you can go to Google search and just type in Emotion Roadmap. You probably find the radio show that I do on PKN here. You probably find my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. And one of the things that you want to be careful of is, although it's not what I'm saying, a lot of people, instead of hearing emotion roadmap, they hear emotional roadmap. Because when they think about emotions and concerns around emotional issues, they think about being emotional. And so what they remember, even though I'm not saying it, is they remember emotional roadmap. It's not emotional roadmap. The roadmap's not emotional. You're emotional. The emotion roadmap shows you how to get from one emotion to another. So if you want to Google it, you can Google emotion roadmap. Okay. Anyway, let me give you the number to call again. It's 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Lots of times when callers do call in, they talk to me about how much they like the show, and they say lots of nice things about the show. And sometimes I'm sure people are out there thinking, geez, I wonder about calling in, but I don't know if what I have to say is important, or I'm a little bashful or shy about putting my issue on the radio for everybody else to hear. And so I know that's a difficult task, and it's an emotion that you have to overcome in order to get help, right? So if you're feeling tentative, if you're feeling unsure, embarrassed, how do you feel okay, calm, confident in order to make that phone call? How do you feel trusting that it's worth your effort to pick the phone up and make a call about something that you're struggling with? What is okay to talk about? Well, I've had people call in for a wide range of issues. People concerned about performance feedback, This is a time of year a lot of people have just finished getting their performance reviews or still in the process of getting them. People are concerned about decisions that they have to make that impact their families or impact their organizations if they're leaders of organizations. People are concerned about changes that are happening. Lots of things are complicated and difficult to work through. And smart people, excellent problem solvers, really good critical thinkers, they get stuck pretty typically. If that happens to them, it's almost always because something emotional is in play. And I have this emotion roadmap. It's really about emotional problem solving. By teasing out the emotions and helping you to see what's actually going on for you and anyone that's key to what you're dealing with, I can help you. So if you're struggling with somebody at home, a loved one, a child, an aging parent, a spouse, a partner, a friend, a neighbor, a relative, an in-law, an outlaw, if you've got something going on with somebody at home, give me a call if you're uncertain how to proceed. And you calling me, what I love about the show is that I believe everybody that listens regularly is constantly learning about how to apply this emotion roadmap to all kinds of different situations. Last week's show was interesting in that I had a caller called in with a wonderful article about stress. I often come in with themes, and I have a theme for today too, but I like to issue and talk about the themes if I don't get callers. So there's always something happening on the show. But at the same time, I think the callers make it so much more interesting and so much more fun for me and for you as well. So one of the callers last week called in about Harvard Business Review article on dealing with stress and the importance of belonging. And he sent me a copy of it. Really neat. And we talked a bit about that, and I'm actually thinking of doing a webinar on stress because it's one of those things that often complicates all of our lives. Some people more than others, and some people seem to be resilient and deal with stress much better than others do. Well, we've got our first caller. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please? Whoops, I'm sorry. Hold on. Want to try it again? I'm sorry. You're on the air now.
It's Dave.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for calling in. What would you like to talk about?
Well, my job requires me to have a commercial driver's license, and I just failed a drug test.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of unsure how to proceed. I'm not terminated as of yet, but it's likely to happen. And so I'm wondering how can I make the best out of this challenge / opportunity, I guess.
Right. So one way is how do you think about it? And if you look at it as a problem versus an opportunity, it's sort of attitudinal right away. So you're onto that. You're onto something, Dave. Obviously, you haven't heard the consequence yet of what's happened. Have you got any history with anyone else in the workplace that had a similar experience and what's happened to them?
Not directly, no.
Okay, and did they determine what kind of drugs you were using? Or was it just something showed up?
Well, what happened, they test for everything from, pot to heroin. It's 5 or 6 things on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was the initial test was inconclusive. I had to go for a retest, and that's monitored, and I have difficulty doing that when I'm being watched, and so as a result, I chose to leave. So they won't conclusively find anything. It'll just go as a refusal, and that translates to a positive test.
That's interesting how it works. I didn't know that. So are you unemployed at the moment?
No. It's pending. Let's put it that way, I guess.
Okay, so what do you want to have happen, I guess? What do you want to... I mean, ideally, if things go your way, what do you want to have happen here?
Well, I'm semi-retired, and to be honest, I was looking to get the summer off anyway. I didn't want it to happen this way.
Right.
But Yeah, I think it is time to make a change. But I'm like, I don't know how can I make my life better going forward as a result of this? You know.
What are you thinking of doing to make life better? I mean, obviously this is happening. You've been thinking about it a little bit. It's always useful before I start and say, here's what you should do, Dave, based on what I would do. It's more important to understand where you are with this and what you're thinking about that might work. And do you have any possible plans that you're considering at least?
Well, I do use a little bit of pot, to be honest. It's really all I use.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, should I just quit? Use this as a chance to quit and look at life without having to depend on it, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
And then kind of see what opportunities arise from that, I guess,
Right.
I got some music interest and stuff. I'm taking some lessons and stuff, but I can't seem to go very far with that. I do well working with people and older people and that kind of thing. So I, feel I have personal skills and stuff.
Dave, do you need to work for an income? I mean, you said you're semi-retired and you wanted to take the summer off, so it doesn't sound like you're pressed for money, at least not that badly.
Right. Yeah, I have a retirement from a previous job that covers most of the bills. It's basically I'm working to help pay, some food and some like property tax stuff. But if I tighten up all the way around, I would probably be okay. But it's nice to have the luxury of an extra income.
Sure. Well, I mean, the obvious things are that are available to you are the two choices you said, right? One is, am I capable, number one, of stopping pot smoking, and am I willing? And those are very two different questions. But you'd have to be able to answer yes to both in order for that to be a reasonable strategy. And it sounds like you're kind of ambivalent about it. You kind of like it, so it's not like it, and you're not heavily a heavy user. It sounds like so. It's more like you just enjoy it periodically. And so at the same time, that's a possibility. There's also the legalization of recreational marijuana looks like it's headed that way in Connecticut anyway. I don't know if you're in New York. New York may be longer. Who knows? But I mean, there's much more tolerance of pot smoking these days than there used to be, but not for certain jobs. So if you're going to be driving a commercial vehicle, nobody's going to want you driving their trucks if you've got pot showing up in your system.
Right, correct. Yeah, this would be a transition from this type of work, I feel,
If you stay with the pot, then I think it makes sense to consider what else might you want to be doing. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And you've talked about being really good with people and with older people. I mean, there's not much money in caring for the elderly in any of these places that you might choose to work for a while. But it's also if for people that like it and feel good about it and are good at it, it's a gift to the world to take care of the elderly. I mean, that's one way of looking at that. And so, I mean, there's an opportunity for you to at least consider, is there something in that arena that doesn't give me a lot of money, but it also gives me some pleasure maybe that I wouldn't get just from driving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's, maybe the care without the pressure of driving and, dealing with, everything that's involved with driving. We know the roads are busier than they have been, and you really have to have eyes behind your head, these days driving.
Well, and
So,
I would say to you that while I don't know that they do drug testing if you're working in a nursing home, maybe they do. I don't know, but nobody wants you pushing their wheelchair if you're high either, right?
right, yeah, I don't know.
But on the other hand, if it's the fact that you might have pot that you smoked on the weekend and you wake up on Monday morning and you're not high, but it's still in your bloodstream, then you can, from what I understand, you can go to work and be very competent at what you do.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, it's just trying to understand what the factors are. That's a piece of it. So the question is, how do you want to feel going forward? Right now, you're feeling a little bit, I don't know, maybe confused, uncertain, and maybe a little upset that this has happened. But also, you sort of feel like maybe it's not a bad thing that it's happened because you kind of want to move on from this anyway. It's sort of how it sounds to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of a repeat pattern for me. Even though I only use recreationally, I don't do it on the job or anything like that. But I don't know. I'm thinking maybe I need a clean break. You know.
A clean break from smoking pot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different thing. Then, have you ever had a time when you weren't smoking?
Yes. Yes. I've had, even a few years at a time. A time span. Without it. Sure.
So, if let's assume that you're able to do this again, because you've got some history that you could do it before, so there's no reason to believe that you couldn't do this again if you make that decision, right?
Right. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
So, if that's the case, would you want to continue to drive commercially, or do you want something different anyway?
I think I would have to, go clean for 3 to 6 months and then see how I feel then about returning to driving.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about it. Yeah.
So, in the meantime, do you need something else to do? You said you're going to take a couple months off, but that's only a couple months. 3 to 6 months is the longer time period. Do you need to try something different? Do you need to try to get involved in something else where you use other skills?
Possibly. I mean, I have plenty of work around the house, and with summer, I can certainly work outside around the home. And maybe in the meantime, put some feelers out locally and see if something would show up as, like on maybe a part-time basis,
So have you had trouble finding jobs in the past?
No, generally no. No, I can generally find work fairly easily.
Okay, so you have the capability of finding work. So if you choose this, you just have to be a little more focused about what specifically do you go after. And you might go after a few different things. It doesn't mean that you have to totally focus, but you might consider a few different ideas about where you might, send out feelers. The second thing is what was it that you think was key to your being successful to just stopping any kind of drug use? What was helpful for you in the past?
Probably, I think getting into yoga. Going to the yoga center and kind of having a new sort of a new way to look at things, and without having to partake in the pot and everything.
So yoga was one strategy. Anything else?
Well, helping to raise our children was one. I needed to be around and level-headed and coherent to deal with raising kids and all that.
Are the kids grown at this point?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Are you helping out with grandchildren?
A little bit, yes.
So that's another incentive that's different, but also incredibly important to be responsible in those situations.
Yes, true.
So, okay,
Yeah.
all right. I mean, so it seems like you've got a few of the pieces, right? It's kind of like a puzzle. You just got to, you got a lot of pieces spread out on the table, and you're trying to figure out how to fit them together. Is sort of what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So I don't know. In a way, it's kind of a I don't know if you call it a blessing, but it's sort of a wake up, a change, that kind of thing.
Well,
So
so if you don't believe if you have a sense that destiny has some overriding impact on our lives, that certain things happen for a particular reason, as opposed to just everything is just incidental and surprise, and just life is kind of random. But if you think it has sort of some structure to it, then part of what you might believe is that what just happened to you was sort of purposeful in your world. In other words, you were kind of needed a push of some kind to make a change, because change doesn't happen that easily, even when we're thinking about it. And maybe the circumstances that came into play, you smoked a little pot, you didn't go for the second drug test, you're kind of refusing, it shows up as a positive, but you never really took the test, so it's not, you could argue it's not positive, I just didn't want to do it. And then just change your life, and make the move that you've been thinking about making, but now put some force and some energy behind it.
right. Yeah. 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 Use it as an incentive, I think, and try to have this list in front of me to refer to as the reason I'm doing it. Yeah.
So the pieces of the puzzle that I've heard so far is, one is you have a history of being able to stop when you felt like there were reasons to stop. If you want to be more involved in your grandchildren's life, that's certainly a reason that makes some sense. If you're going to have more time that you want to be responsibly caring and helping out with them, or him or her, depending if it's one or more. And then the second is that you said you're really good with people, and you like older people, and there's not a lot of people that are comfortable around older people, at least helping them out. So that's a potential area that you might want to get to some. I mean, maybe you don't sign on as a job, you do a little bit of volunteering just to see if you like it. And if
Right.
if you find yourself really enjoying it and making a difference, again, I view that as a gift to the world when people can do that kind of work. And so you're feeling good about yourself then, and there's less reason necessarily to get high when that's going on. And also, if you're helping with your grandchildren, to me, I have 3 grandkids, and I love being around them. And it's a real joy when I have the chance to be helpful with the kids. And of course, I feel highly responsible to be as attentive as I can be and completely focused when I'm with them, especially if I have the responsibility of caring for them for a period of time. So, I mean, all that sort of working in your favor. And if that's true, then the question is, you're going to feel, if you do these things, how do you think? How would you feel if you actually make all this happen in, I don't know, the next couple of months or so?
Right. Yeah, I think it'd be definitely a positive. Yeah, thing to do.
So you go from uncertain to certain. You go from sort of confused and, maybe a little disappointed and even embarrassed a bit, to feeling quite comfortable in your own skin and confident that you've made good choices and satisfied with the direction your life's taking you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's that's a start. Certainly a good direction to go to. All right. Well, I appreciate your help, Mr. Wolfe, and
Oh, you can call me Chuck. Thanks, Dave. You can call me Chuck. That's fine. But anyway, I hope this is helpful to you. It seems like, again, one of the things that I like to do in trying to help people is just kind of help them think through, what are the pieces and how do they fit together, and how do they change how you are feeling to what you ideally would want to feel. And it seems like if the things we talked about that you're capable of, clearly, there's nothing that we talked about that you're not capable of. The next question is willingness and how motivated you are, Dave.
Right.
So that part you got to figure out on your own. But it sounds like you are. I mean, it sounds like this is a good time, and kind of walking through it and thinking about it. Sounds like you got a plan.
Yeah, I think so. So, I just needed to run by somebody and, sort of, like looking in the mirror or in a room where you can have an echo and hear what I'm saying. For Val, to I can't think of the word, but to make it valid, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think just playing it back to you is one part of it, and the other is to help you organize it and think about it in sort of a pattern or in a planful or mindful way. So you have a couple of like initial first steps, and some of the first steps are just making some decisions here, I think, and getting organized. And
right.
Yeah, I think you've done the organization in terms of at least getting started with that. And now the question is, hey, how motivated am I to do this? And do I start when I hang up the phone, or do I put it off for a few more weeks because I'm really not certain? That you got to answer yourself. But hopefully, if you hang up the phone, you start thinking, okay, so what do I do today? How do I get started on this? And then you're off and running.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care, Dave. Bye-bye. Thanks for the call.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, so that's how it works, folks. It's just thinking about your situation, trying to get some clarity in your own mind, in your own head. What are you saying to yourself? What feelings are driving those thoughts, and how do you change what you're saying? How do you organize it? How do you structure it? And how do you motivate yourself? How do you get yourself motivated? Interesting. Okay, anybody else want to call? I've got about 25 minutes left to the show. The number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a second, because if I dive into what I'm going to talk about, it might be so interesting that nobody calls. On the other hand, I think calls are really more interesting even than what I'm going to say to you. So I'll give you a moment. Again, 203-336-9756. By the way, if you like the show and you want to watch it on YouTube, you can go to Simsbury TV on YouTube and type in Emotion Roadmap there. And all of the shows that I've done the last couple of years are videotaped and shown on my hometown. I live in Simsbury, Connecticut. And if you go to Simsbury TV, you'll see the shows. You can go to listen on podcast either on SoundCloud or Stitcher or iTunes. Again, just type in Emotion Roadmap. Okay, one more time on the number, and then I'll jump into what I wanted to talk about today. 203-336-9756. If you'd like to make a phone call today and you're thinking about, I wonder if it's worth it for me to call, I would say call now. Because sometimes people decide to call and they wait till the very end of the show and I can't talk to you, or I don't have time to help you. So if you want to call, again, 203-336-9756. So I strongly encourage you to pick up the phone and make the call now if you're thinking about doing it. And I'll wait a moment for you. Okay, so here's what I wanted to talk about today. There are moments in all our lives where we face failure. We face a situation where we don't know how to proceed. We're stuck. I mean, Dave was facing it now in a way. But we also somehow, some way, do things that we know when we're doing them are really the wrong thing to do. Let me give you an example of that. You're out at night and you're with colleagues and people that you work with, and you have, you're out, and maybe it's a regular thing that you do, and you usually have a couple of drinks and then go home. In a couple of drinks, you handle 2 drinks comfortably, and your conversation is reasonable, your emotions are under control, the things that you might be concerned or upset about, you don't go off on them, because basically it's a social time, you're enjoying the people you're with, and you don't want to complicate it by saying something that might be a problem later on for you. And then one night you're out and it's been a stressful day and you've got some things at home maybe that are causing you to feel a bit overwhelmed with what's going on in your life, along with work that might be really challenging at that point in time. And instead of having 2 drinks, you have 3 or 4 or even more. And all of a sudden, the floodgates open up, and you're talking about things that somehow, some part of you knows this is a problem that's going to come back tomorrow, the next day, the next week, maybe for months. And yet, you don't stop yourself, even though there's a part of you that knows what you're doing is trouble. So that's one of the kind of things I think of as a failure to stop yourself. Sometimes smart people do really dumb things. I do them. Not so much drinking for me, but what I might do is I love ice cream, and some nights on a tough day where I want to reward myself, I'll eat all the ice cream that might be in the house, and that could be a lot. And yet I know I'm going to be uncomfortable and sorry that I did it, and yet I'm still doing something really dumb. Maybe there's a few things that you do on occasion that are similar. But then I also know that there are times when we can predict that there's going to be some challenges in our life where we're going to feel like a failure, or at least that we're failing at something. And how do we handle failure? There's a lot of songs or stories about, where it's not about getting knocked down. It's about what happens when you get back up and how quick you get back up. And with what attitude do you get back up? I have a horse. I've had her for, she's 20 years old. I've had her since she's 2. I've had her for 18 years. One day I went out riding. I like to do trail riding. I'm not interested in showing my horse. I like to show my horse to my friends and family, but there's a lot of people that have horses or are interested in showmanship and being in a ring and competing with others. I had no interest in that. I was always interested in just riding for pleasure riding, Western style, putting on my cowboy hat and my cowboy boots and going off into the woods and just enjoying a beautiful day with my horse in the woods. That to me is like one of the great pleasures in life. Well, one day I had taken my horse out and there was something wrong. And I don't know what was wrong with her, but she threw me. But she didn't just throw me. I've been thrown before. But she tried to hurt me. She actually fell over backwards. And this is so unlike my horse. But for a period of time after that happened, I was so mad at her. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to ride her again. And then something happened where I don't know if you've ever had a horse, you know that they get shots periodically. They get them in the fall and in the spring. And she was due for some shots, and so I was still paying for her to be boarded and have the shots. And she got some shots, and I got a call from the barn where I keep her that said that she was passed out on the ground and convulsing somewhat, and something happened with the shot, and would I come up and take care of her? Now, I was faced with going up, and it was not a great time for me, and I also was feeling like, she tried to hurt me before. Do I really want to take care of her? And I felt like, of course I want to take care of her. I've had her for a long time, and I care about her. I'm mad at her right now, but I do want to take care of her. So I went up to the barn, and I saw her, and everything changed for me when I saw her looking so frail and really in trouble. Her eyes were open at this point, but she was lying down and wouldn't get up. And as much as we all tried to get her up, there were people helping, she wouldn't get up. So we called the vet, and we tried to figure out what to do, and she gave us some strategies for how to get the horse up, and we managed to get her on her feet. And then once on her feet, part of the strategy was you have to keep her on her feet. And there's some things you can give her to possibly help with whatever she's reacting to. And they gave me some medicine for her, and I gave her the medicine. And then I stayed with her for like 3 hours of just walking with her being extremely gentle, very appreciative, very thankful. And we rebonded during that time. And she's healthy now. And I don't give her those shots anymore. But my point is that sometimes when something causes you to pull apart from something or someone you love, you don't necessarily want to see him again because you're so upset with what's happened. And yet, if you really do care about him, something may trigger an event where you feel like you got to go back and you want to be helpful. And then the question is, can you repair and restore the relationship? And so I tell you this as something that sometimes you get so mad you think that it's over and you don't really want to go back, and you don't want to revisit with the animal or the person because the person hurt you or the animal hurt you, and you feel like, I don't want to take that chance again. I got too hurt. Now mine was a physical hurt, but it wasn't just physical. It was emotional that my horse would want to do that to me after all these years of me being her owner. And I'm not there with her every day. And when you board your horse, somebody else is feeding her, somebody else is is with her, calling her in for hay and oats if she gets oats in certain times of the year. So it's all, when I saw her, I would come to ride her, but I would also brush her down and groom her and do things like that. And so we had a relationship, and she somehow didn't value that relationship, and that was I felt rejected and hurt, and it was so hard to come back from that. And that's true, I think, in people relationships too. And my point is that sometimes when we fail at a relationship for whatever reason, we walk away from it instead of trying to figure out, how do we make this right? How do we fix this? But then we have other kinds of failures too. My daughter is a special needs teacher, and if you know anything about special needs children, they have test results, and teachers are measured on those results, and the kids are too, in terms of, are they progressing? Are they showing the kind of goal progression in a given year that they're supposed to show? Now, some of these children are really struggling, not just with school, but with home, and some of their lives are challenging. Some come from wonderful homes. Some come from people who want to have wonderful homes, but are challenged because they don't have, they're not working. They're single parent. They're moving all the time because they can't pay bills, and they're being chased by creditors. So there's all kinds of situations that people show up with, and that are impacting their ability to learn at school. And yet, whatever the experience is, a teacher and an entire school is graded these days on how well kids perform on standardized tests. And so one of the things I was trying to talk with my daughter about was, I said, with special needs students, that all day at school, when they're mainstreamed with kids who are not special needs, many of them know that they can't do as well as the other kids. And how difficult is that for any of us? You don't have to be special needs to feel this, to know that I can't compete with the top people in the room. But what if you're at the bottom and you don't feel like you compete with hardly anybody in the room, and that you're always at the bottom of any kind of test or assessment? How does that feel when you go to school every day for these kids? And then when they're giving a test and they have a question that's on the test, and they look at that question, and the question is so out of reach for them, and it just defeats them, and they look at it, and all those feelings of self-doubt creep back in, and they feel like a failure. And they get discouraged, and they don't go on to the next question or the question after that because they just don't want to do this anymore. And they toss in the towel and they walk away. Not that they literally get up and walk away, but they just stop trying. So I was talking to my daughter about this the other day, and I said, what if you talk to your kids about when you face that, when you have that question that you have no way of knowing. We've taught you strategies about how to make your best guess, but still you feel as though this is beyond you. And yet what you don't know is the next question or the question after that, one that you are going to be able to answer. How do you deal with that moment where you feel like a failure? How do you deal with it? How do you pick yourself up and move forward? How do you do that? How do you teach people, if you're a teacher or a coach or a parent? How do you teach your children or your workers or other leaders how to move forward when you've been stymied, set back, fallen off your horse? Horse threw you. Horse didn't want to have a relationship with you. Happens at work. It happens at school with other kids. How do you help anyone move past that moment? I've been thinking about that for a while. How do you do that? If you have any thoughts about that, I encourage you to call in. I'll share mine. But again, we all face moments where we have had situations where we struggle. And when we struggle, some feedback. When we struggle and we have that experience of struggling, how do we move forward? How do we do better? What can we do to turn around a situation like that? What can we possibly do that's going to make that right? How do we do that and make it right? What are your thoughts about that? Give me a call at 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Okay? So I'd like to hear back from you about what you think about when you're struggling with a moment of failure in your life. What have you learned about picking yourself back up and getting back on the horse, or dealing with that person again, or facing another problem even though this problem was unsolvable for you? How do you move forward when you've been stymied or failed or embarrassed or just feel defeated? How do you move forward from that? The number is 203-336-9756. Two 336-9756. Well, one of the things that I do, if I find myself in that place, is I try to understand, what was I thinking when that happened? What am I thinking now? How is what I'm thinking affecting how I'm behaving? And in terms of how I'm behaving, can I change that behavior to something more productive? Is that possible even? What could I do different? How could I make it better? I seem to be getting some crackling in here. I don't really know how to stop it. Wish I could. All right. What are the things that I would suggest for any of you, if you find yourself in this place? You start to think about how you are feeling. And if you're feeling defeated, you want to feel, instead of feeling like a loser, how do I feel like a winner again? What can I do to feel like a winner? How can I move from feeling of I'm failing at something to I'm winning again? Or at least I'm going to win the next one, even though I've lost a bunch in a row or I've lost some. One of the things that's happening in, for those of you who listen regularly to the show, one of the things that's happening right now is there's a number of sports teams. I'm from the Massachusetts, state of Massachusetts. I spent most of my early life. And the people from my hometown and from my state, from my former state, Massachusetts, tend to think of Boston, or at least the state, as title town, because of all the championships in the last few years of the Patriots and the Red Sox, and even the Celtics won in the year, since the millennium, and the Bruins too. And what can we do when we're no longer winning? The Celtics came off a year last year where they looked like they were going to dominate the Eastern Conference. And they had the talent, it certainly seemed. They had a coach everybody thought was like one of the best coaches in the game, Brad Stevens. And yet they struggled mightily this year. And most people would say that their regular season, even though they came up with a winning record, was a failure. Now, what can we do to help the Celtics? How can they proceed into the playoffs, which start this weekend, so that they're feeling like they got back on the horse and they're all going to be unselfish and share the ball and switch off and communicate really powerfully and effectively with one another when they're switching to cover different men in the game? How does that all happen? Well, that's the challenge that the team has right now, both the players and the coach. The Red Sox, Alex Cora was considered a genius. He was the first-time manager of the Boston Red Sox, and he led them, I believe it was the most wins ever in any season of any Red Sox team in his first year. Took them all the way through to be world champions. And now they've started the year, and I believe the record is they're 3-9. 9 losses already. It's such a different year. It's such a different look. So is Alex Cora no longer a genius? At first people thought, wow, he's going to be here forever. Is he going to be gone after another year or two? Was it just luck that he had that first great year? What do the team players, what does the coach, the coach or manager, Alex Cora, need to do different to turn around this failing early season number of losses? How does he turn it around? How did the team turn it around? So it's like champions, world champions can face these experiences of being successful and then facing failure. And we're all somewhat defined by how we address these things in our own lives. When we get knocked down, when we get back up, how we get back up, what we do when we get back up, somewhat defines us, doesn't it? So the emotion roadmap for me is a way of thinking about this that says, how is everyone feeling during these times? When you got a team that you're managing, how am I feeling when it's just about me? How is my family feeling when we've had some setbacks as a family? As a town, as a state, as a church, as a synagogue, a mosque, when any of these organizations that we're part of, that we really belong to and feel really close to, are going through some setbacks and some failures, how do we turn that around? And so much of it is based, I believe, in this idea of thinking about, how are you feeling? How do you want to feel? And how do we turn that around? How do we make it better? What do we need to do to make it better? Unclear. It's not always clear. And yet, if we stop and we say to ourselves, what I am feeling, like a loser, defeated, upset, maybe embarrassed, is not how I want to feel. It's not helpful. It happened. I made a mistake. I'm embarrassed. I did something dumb. Or a situation with someone I care about had a dramatic incident occur that caused that relationship to be called into question. But I want to save the relationship. What do I do to make that better? How do I feel instead of embarrassed, instead of like a loser, instead of defeated, instead of upset? How do I feel successful, like a winner? How do I feel confident? How do I feel competent? What can I do to make that happen? That's what the emotion roadmap's about. That's how the emotion roadmap works. And I hope that you think about that somewhat, because all of us get knocked down at different points in our lives. And it's useful, like I was saying to my daughter about the special needs kids, to talk to them ahead of time about when you hit that one question or the number of questions that you just can't answer. How do you say, okay, I can't do that one, but let's see what I can do with the next one, and keep moving forward, confident in who you are and what you can do, and not upset or embarrassed or defeated by what you can't do. How do we do that moving forward? So, hopefully that's worth listening to today. I hope you enjoyed the show today. This is Chuck Wolfe. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. You've been listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, Litchfield counties, and Connecticut and Suffolk County in New York's Long Island. We stream around the world at WPKN.org, and you can listen to us on podcast by going to WPKN.org or on SoundCloud, Stitcher, or iTunes. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. I'll be with you next month. Take care now.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.